to be educated, but I'm so frustrated.
I see y'all. You back on the channel again. Hey, something must be right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Music Mindset channel. Hey, we're going to get into something special tonight, man. Hey, there was a certain song back in the day, I can tell you, in the 80s that had me hopping around the dance floor and stuff like that. I was a young kid, but I tell you what, this song was special. Called Saturday Love by Alexander O'Neal and Cherrelle. Put together by Jam and Lewis and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I kind of grew up on that stuff. Learned a lot about music listening to that type of stuff back in the day. And as I got older, picked up some instruments, learned to play, put together a band, cut some records. And, you know, I had an opportunity one time when Cherrelle was actually hanging out with the Johnson boys down in South Florida and they did a show. I was actually one of the opening acts for these guys. So we had a chance to hang out and talk backstage and stuff like that. Really cool lady, man. I appreciated meeting her and stuff like that. But tonight we're going to get into the background of these guys, you know what I mean? It gets very interesting, man. They had successful careers, but boy, did they have some drama going on. Y'all hang in there. We're going to get into that. There's a lot to see, hear, and know, but you won't get it unless you hang around to the end.
Hey, hold on. Hang in here for a few seconds. If you enjoy my deep dives here on the Music Mindset channel, you'll also want to check out Dusty's magazine and their stories too. I'm an article contributor to this print-only quarterly magazine that explores the world of crate digging, DJs, and rare music finds. Each issue is over 200 pages of pure music history. My articles are based on my videos here and will be featured in future editions. So head to their website or Instagram to subscribe and get your own issues, keeping the music culture alive. Info in the description below. Ooh, golly wally, y'all. That's some crap we used to say back in the day when something was extra. Hey now, please forgive me for getting excited about these old jams on this channel. But if I don't, is there anybody else out there who's gonna step forward and give them their due props the right way? I ain't even sure if the kids even understand what the deal was back then. I mean, with the auto-tune, mumble singing, and straight boo-boo out there these days, this new generation might not ever find this kind of funky stuff on their own. So bump that, I'll just do it myself then. So let's go back to the mid-80s, where I happened to be in school in Daytona, Florida. The sun was hot and the R&B was even hotter. And during those college days on the beach, one song seemed to capture the essence of every weekend, and that was Saturday Love, my brother. And I'm about to go a little deep into the groove and the story of the two voices behind that classic hit of Alexander O'Neal and Cherrelle to see how they became funk R&B royalty despite the heavy storms they had to weather.
For always and forever, you will be.
These two were truly the Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell of their prime time from the mid-1980s to the 90s. Man, basically everything they put out was a hit. And they cracked the top 10 R&B charts about 9 times individually and also together during their run. But the real story for both of them begins in the former slavery capital of Natchez, Mississippi, where Alexander O'Neal was born in 1953. He was raised by his mother Dora and never knew his father, who died in an accident before Alex was even born.
Even though I had a great wealth of male role models, okay, but it still wasn't like having your own father.
Alex grew up in a 4-room house with 5 half-brothers and sisters, living in poverty but rich with the love of his family. While he was an all-state linebacker in high school, it was clear he had a gift for singing when he started performing with a local band called the Soul Morticians at just 14 years old. After a brief stint in college and factory work in Chicago, he moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1974, giving himself 10 years to make it in music. Now, while Alex was finding his way in the North, Cheryl Ann Norton was growing up in a totally and very different world as the daughter of a wealthy entertainment lawyer in Beverly Hills, California. Note that she is also the first cousin of Pebbles, another famous singer from that era. But Cherrelle, born in 1958, she never had a worry in the world.
I never wanted anybody to know that I was a Beverly Hills kid all my life.
But she found her true style in music when her family established a summer home in Detroit, Michigan. It was there that her neighbor, the legendary jazz bassist and the guy who did the famous ballad Starship, Michael Henderson, saw this pretty girl washing her car and later found out that she also had a voice to match her looks. Henderson became a massive force in her early career, bringing her into the studio as a backup singer and taking her on tour as an opening act for Luther Vandross. She eventually took the stage name Cherrelle, inspired by her pestering supervisor at a bank who could never say her real name right. Cherrelle was the sexy diva with a lil mean spirit and hot vocals, possessing a unique sassiness that made her everyone's favorite fly girl. All that took her to her debut album, Fragile, released in 1984. She got a major with I Didn't Mean to Turn You On, which reached number 8 on the R&B charts and 79 on the Billboard Hot 100. By the way, that track didn't just dominate R&B, it had a massive reach. Robert Palmer took it to the rock world, and years later, even Mariah Carey paid homage by covering it on her Glitter album. By this time, Alexander O'Neal had already established himself as a powerful solo artist and a central figure in the Minneapolis music scene. If you didn't know, he was the original lead singer of Flight Time, the band that Prince eventually transformed into The Time. Following a typical disagreement with Prince, he was replaced with Mars Day by '81. So, Alexander had been floating around and doing some independent releases after leaving The Time. But he would get hooked up and signed with Taboo Records, and then released his self-titled debut album in 1985. Now, that thing right there produced several major R&B hits that all real music heads know, especially this one. If You Were Here Tonight, sir, that is Alexander in a nutshell.
Can't you understand it?
A smooth ballad that became one of his signature songs and reached 13 on the R&B charts. So, how did Cherrelle and Alexander finally get together? Well, the lives of these two singers finally collided because of the legendary Clarence Avant at Taboo Records, same guy who hooked up the SOS Band and others. Cherrelle's father, James Feaster, used his connections to get her a demo tape to Clarence, who signed her sight unseen in 1983, getting her to that debut album. Around the same time, Alex had been kicked out of The Time by Prince and doing mostly independent recording. Clarence Avant saw the potential in both artists, and the godfather of black music thought to pair them with producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who also been fired by Prince. But after the SOS Band, Jam and Lewis became kind of the in-house architects for Taboo Records. And by 1985, it was time for Jam and Lewis to create the music for the duet that would further define their producing careers, Alexander and Cherrelle.
You will be my Saturday love.
But the making of Saturday Love was anything but perfect, y'all.
I'll tell you, I was embarrassed because I came up with the initial idea of the song. I thought it was good when I did it, but then when Cherry said, I said, I got an idea, and he said, sing it to me. And I said, ooh, kind of like a nursery rhyme. It's kind of, Sunday, Monday, thing like that. And I said, it's like Sesame Street. And he said, oh, that's dope, that's really good. And I said, oh, okay, cool. But I was embarrassed to even sing it.
When I think about
We wrote the song, we had written the first verse of the song, and Cherrelle went in and sang. And then when we were ready for the second verse, Terry hadn't written it yet. So he just said, let's have Alex sing the same verse, but in his own way. So we gave him the same lyrics, he sang it in his own way. Then we finished the song, and we thought we'd go back and fix it at some point. We never did.
When I think about you.
Now, this is the actual building where all those famous hits by Jam and Lewis were created back in the day. Surprisingly, it is nothing special on the outside. However, what happened on the inside is what mattered and made the money. The Saturday Love recording process at the original Flight Time on Nicollet Avenue in South Minneapolis was a high-stakes struggle because Jimmy and Terry were basically forced to become their own engineers after their professional engineer walked out on them. They were figuring out a physical patch bay on the fly with no computer plugins to help, and Cherrelle was a total trooper through the whole mess. They'd have to tell her to take her headphones off because they were about to plug something in that might blow a speaker, and sure enough, it often did. The technical chaos was so intense that it's one of the main reasons they never actually got around to writing that second verse. But regardless of the logistical mess, the track became a massive hit, peaking at number 2 on the R&B charts and reaching the top 10 in the United Kingdom.
Never on Sunday, Monday's too soon.
That countdown of the days of the week became an anthem, a hook so catchy that for years, fans have joked about it being the unofficial way a whole generation learned their weekly calendar. They kept that momentum going with more hits like
And I've been missed, but
Never Knew Love Like This,
home is where the heart is, baby. And I'm in
and Everything I Miss at Home, the latter of which finally gave Cherrelle her first solo #1 on the R&B charts. The industry took notice too. Saturday Love earned them a Soul Train Music Award nomination, and they were widely celebrated as R&B royalty for defining the sound of an era. But as their professional lives reached new heights, their personal lives began to fracture. Alexander O'Neal had already fathered 6 children during his wild years in the 70s and early 80s, including 2 from his first marriage. In his autobiography, he admits this era was a turbulent mix of addiction and unstable relationships, as his solo career exploded in the mid-80s. His addiction to cocaine became so severe that it began to stall his career. It got so dark that Jam and Lewis eventually had to pull the plug, giving him a legendary ultimatum. He had to go to rehab or they would stop producing his music. Alex agreed, and after completing his treatment, he returned to the studio with a new focus. That turnaround led directly to his 1987 triple platinum album, Hearsay, a project named specifically to address the industry rumors and gossip about his addiction that had almost ended his career. It was shortly after that peak, in 1989, that he finally found his true anchor in Cynthia Compa. While they would be partners for over 35 years and have 2 children together, they wouldn't officially marry until 2024. They held a surprise wedding live on stage at the Royal Albert Hall during his final farewell world tour, titled Time to Say Goodbye. Over those decades, Cynthia became his manager and the stabilizing force for the 2 children they shared in London, while helping him maintain a relationship with his 6 older children back in the States. After making history as the first artist to sell out Wembley Arena 6 nights in a row and spending 14 years living in London, Alex has finally hung up the microphone. But as he wrapped that tour in 2024, he decided it was time to leave London and head back home to United States in Minnesota to be near his kids and grandkids. While Alex was battling his demons and finding a second home in London, the 90s brought a wave of tragedy that nearly broke Cherrelle. She tried to release the album The Woman I Am, which was a major risk, because for the first time in her career, she wasn't using producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, now going with Narada Michael Walden instead. That album stalled out, and Taboo let her go. This was not the success she hoped for, and only the beginning of her troubles to come. Sadly, she lost one of her sisters to unknown causes, and then her professional world collapsed when her father, James Feaster, was sent to prison for financial fraud. It was a devastating blow, because her father had also served as her manager, the man who had negotiated her first major deal. The heartbreak didn't stop there. In 1992, Randy Rand, Cherrelle's longtime partner and the father of her 2 eldest daughters, was killed in a motorcycle accident. Life felt like it was spinning out of control as she tried to navigate the grief of losing her sister, her father's freedom, and the man she loved all within 2 years. All griefs that would take up mental space. But it was a couple of years later when Cherrelle at least found love again with a new partner and became pregnant. Unfortunately, while on a cruise in Martinique in 1993, she went into premature labor 4 months early. She had to undergo an emergency C-section with no anesthetic, a harrowing ordeal that left her healing on the island for months. She named her daughter Martinique, a living testament to surviving the impossible. Following that traumatic situation in the islands, Cherrelle stepped away from the massive spotlight to focus on healing and motherhood. While she released her final studio album, The Right Time, in 1999, the mainstream music industry had largely moved on from the classic mid-80s sound. Instead of letting that break her, she transitioned into a seasoned veteran of the live stage. For the next 2 decades, she quietly built a steady life on the U.S. legacy and festival circuits, proving to audiences year after year that her unique sass and vocal power hadn't faded an inch. But tragedy came back for her again in 2012, when her father passed away at the age of 80. Yet, today, Cherrelle remains an undisputed queen of the stage, a little older and wiser, and still flying out to shows for the most part, sassy, looking flawless, and singing those timeless hits for generations of fans who refuse to let the real grooves die. She is still the diva we love, continuing her journey largely on her own terms, a true queen of the Minneapolis sound. Now, as far as Alexander O'Neal returning to the U.S. in 2024, it was supposed to be a peaceful homecoming, but as we look at him today in 2026, he's been through hell. In late 2025, Alex was in the ICU on life support for 2 weeks, fighting a brutal case of pneumonia and an enlarged heart. The very day he was released, while he was still hooked up to oxygen to breathe, a freak fire, sparked by the machine, almost burned his apartment to the ground. Today, Alex is a survivor, living with relatives in the Twin Cities, having lost almost everything he owned, but still holding on to Cynthia. He's back where it all started, in the same city where he first made his mark. As you look back to Saturday Love and all the other music Alexander and Cherrelle created together, we're reminded that true funk, soul, and R&B isn't just about the notes you sing, but more about the life you might have had to go through to sing them. Both singers pulled through their darkest hours by leaning on talent and an inner strength that some of us can only wish we had.
Yeah, man, there are a lot of stories out there about the drama that happened in their lives, and you can see when you go a little deeper and get a little more intricate with it, you find out that it was really kind of rough for these guys. And I definitely didn't have time to tell it all, but told enough so you could see that these guys had to come through a whole lot of stuff to get that hit song, get those hit records, and have the career that they had. And old Cherrelle was good friends with Whitney, and fortunate she didn't end up like that. And my man Alexander, man, I wish him well and hope things go well for him, because I got to say his vocals meant a lot to me in my learning. Yeah, man, I believe Cherrelle's going on 70 years old in a couple years and stuff like that. She's still looking gorgeous, you know what I'm saying? Still taking care of herself and still trying to hang on to that voice. I wish her luck in the future too. And I hope you appreciate that on the Music Mindset channel. We do this type of stuff. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Make sure you support the channel in any way you can so we can keep doing this good stuff.